Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Julia. I was an admission officer at Haverford College, an outside reader for Emory University, and I currently work at Milton Academy, an independent boarding and day school outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy has a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia and a master's degree from North Carolina State University. She works in private practice in Raleigh as a mental health therapist. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Good afternoon, friends. Very excited today about the episode we have coming to you. First, I'll give you a health update. Then we'll transition and you'll hear from Julia and I. So Julia would join me to discuss two topics. Can an essay be too short? And if so, what is too short? And advice on students when it comes to resumes. And then the final part will be Lynda's final part of her interview with Derek Terrell from the Coalition for College, better known as just the Coalition. And they'll be talking about understanding the Coalition. All right, friends, let's start with the weight update. You know, a number of you have reached out to me in the last 4 months, more so than I really would have expected, by text, by email, and just said, like the health updates. Because, part of me wondered, just kind of spending personal business out here that people are coming here for college admissions. I'll make sure I'm talking about stuff they're interested in. All right, so let's just get to the punchline. I lost 2 pounds in the last month. So for those of you who are following, 10 pounds in month 1, 5 in month 2, 5 in month 3, and now 2 in month 4. And I know it's summer, you are saying, uh-oh, stuck. I see where this is going. You're always talking about trends in college admissions. 10, 5, 5, 2. This is bad. I'm actually encouraged, and let me tell you why. I'm going to do this via an analogy. So let's say Jim and Joe are brothers. They happen to be twins, and Jim's got a problem. He's an alcoholic. He can't lay the sauce off. And he visits his brother Joe for Thanksgiving. And it's oftentimes a problem because Joe likes to drink. There's a lot of alcohol around. Every time he visits Joe, he just spirals back down into another addiction with his alcoholism. But this time, when he visits Joe, he actually has a drink and he actually handles it with moderation. And so it doesn't lead to another bout of alcoholism. That's how I feel right now. My bugaboo, my Achilles heel, my nemesis has always been travel and holidays. It's been bad, especially when I could travel and expense any restaurant I want to eat at. That just wasn't good. Or when I would go to some admissions conferences, and they've cut back, but some of them in the past used to be really grandiose affairs when it came to the food. I mean, 5-star dining, and it would just throw me off. So I feel like I survived Thanksgiving and I survived my birthday bash, 8 days in North Carolina, and I'm still went down and didn't go up. So I'm actually encouraged. Plus, there was a time when my perfectionism would have just, had me beat myself up and be bedraggled. I'd not be in a good mood. But I'm learning to be liberated from that and take small wins. Now, there were a few things. My streak of entering my food every day ended. I lasted more than 3 months. It wasn't intentional. I got into a little bit of a bad habit of not entering all my food right away. And so sometimes I'd go as many as 2 days and I have to remember every single thing for the day before and the current day. And then that happened to me one time and I just literally couldn't remember everything. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to take a little break for a bit, but I'm back at it. And I picked up a smartwatch, and I know what you're thinking. You're just getting a smartwatch? Are you like from the dinosaur age? Yeah, basically. Everyone in the family's had one for a long time. But I just got a smartwatch, and this thing does all kinds of little really good things. So I feel like I'm back in the right mental state, and I'm trying to make a lifestyle change. So I know that if I do it gradually, I can keep it off. And I'm starting to see some benefits here. I mean, when I ran track, I'm basically 6.5 feet with shoes on, a little under 6 without shoes. I was 177 pounds when I ran track. And I was thin. And I just wore large shirts. And then I remember even by the very end, before I even graduated from college, I was up to an extra large. So I stayed extra large for a really, really long time. And then I would say probably in my 40s, mid 40s, I went to 2X. And I knew I had a problem because just a couple months before I started this program, I was wearing 3X shirts. Yeah, I remember going on a college flying, sometimes they're like, what size shirt do we give you? And I remember being, oh, geez, this is embarrassing. Do I tell them 3X? I remember once saying 2X because I was too embarrassed to say 3X. Fortunately, shirts are different sizes, so that 2X actually fit me really, really great. But right now, I'm kind of swimming in those old 3Xs that I bought back to my 2X. So anyway, there's my weight loss. Look for an update next month. Some of you might be thinking, wait a minute, why are you giving this to us December 11th? Well, what happened was I got back from my trip from Colorado where I had the knee surgery on the 5th of August. So I actually started this on August 6th. I actually started the weight program, right away on August 1st, but I couldn't get on a scale. So my weight in day for me is always the 6th because that's kind of when I had access to a scale. Anyway, enough of that. Let's transition to our content because I feel like we've got some great content for you today. Some of my favorite episodes are the ones where I disagree with Lisa or I disagree with Susan or I disagree with Vince, or Julia or whatever. And I think those are great because, for one, we don't disagree that much, but we all have our own experiences and we try to be really authentic with you. And a lot of times we throw out a topic and we come on live on the air and we actually sometimes find out live on the air what the other person actually believes. But the reason why I like them, because I feel you as a listener, you get to hear two opposing views. And I think it's a really great way for you to develop your own thinking and your own views is to sort of hear arguments from two different perspectives. And then you can decide either right then and there or maybe upon further research down the road. So Jill and I discussed two topics. They would have been great questions if listeners sent them in, but they're just a couple things I wanted to get Julia's view on. And we didn't completely agree. And I thought that was great. So the first one is there such a thing as too short when it comes to an essay? And if so, what is too short? Is too short like 80% of the word length, 50%, 20%? Like what's too short when it comes to a college essay that gives you a word count? And the second question is when a school asks me to complete an optional resume in my college application, should I do it? And if so, is adding a photo a good idea or a bad idea? All right, let's dive right in. Good morning, friends. I'm with Julia. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good. And one thing Julia and I love to do with each other is compare notes in terms of how we handle different things. And so I have a couple things that I encounter a lot. And I'm really curious if Julia's answers are similar to my answers or for, how we're advising people. So I want to talk about that today. So the first thing I want to know while Julia answers it is when someone says, what is too short for a personal statement? Or this even could apply to any essay, like it's a 200-worder. Is there a minimum number of words that I should write? So do you approach that with, let me just ask it open-endedly and just see how you advise people on that.
Yeah, that's a great one. Rarely do I run into this with students. I will say that. But it does come up, right? Especially as students start moving through supplemental essays, they start to be able to realize, oh, I can really fine tune this answer and I maybe don't need everything. That was particularly apropos. We're recording this on December 2nd and the UC app was due, the University of California, 2 days ago. And some of my students had been reusing some supplemental essays and were like, oh, wow, I don't really need 350 words. So I have seen a couple Common App essays of that were pretty great at 500, 525, 550. When you think about it, like 150 words is like essentially maybe a paragraph more. So it's not super short, but I would say if there is more to be said or if it's not clear or whatnot, you probably do want to keep going. But that's not to say that maybe a 500 word Common App essay is not a good one. It could be a really great one actually and really tight. I actually had a student this year who did around like 530 and it was like nothing was missing from the essay. It was great. So I do think like basically if I think about percentage, I do think probably getting to 75% of the word count is probably a safe place to be. It can be a little, usually when there's a 200 word answer, if it's maybe 100 words, maybe that's okay because 200 is short anyways. And so, we're talking about maybe 3 to 4 sentences out of that 100 extra words. So it's possible, but I would say that, maybe getting to close to 75% or maybe even 2/3 of an essay count. You're not raising any red flags or maybe missing chunks of things, but really depends on the answer. But I would say a lot of the times, especially if it's a hefty word count, I'm thinking like Cornell or the old Tulane. Why Tulane was about 800 words, and
there's still a few 800s out. There's still a few 800 worders out there.
Yeah, or Chicago that doesn't really have a word count. Georgetown will have a sort of sense of length of your answer, but I would say, if it's a hefty word count, you do want to try to get to probably 75% of the word count. But if you feel like you've said what you've said and it doesn't look like it's any glaring holes, I think you might be good to go.
So let me ask it a different way. Do you ever remember being on the reader side and reading something that felt too short?
No, actually. To be fair, the last
That's
time
because you're at Haverford College or Emory.
And it was both schools had small word count supplements. So to be fair, I'm not sure I have a ton of experience with maybe like a 500 word count or more, or even I can't even remember what Haverford's were, but I think they were 350 or 400 or below. And in fact, most of the time I worked in Haverford, there was a 1 sentence answer actually. So I'm glad that got removed because now I see how much anxiety that causes students.
Now that you're on this side of the desk. Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough thing because there is a point where it's not enough, right? So I had a conversation with a Yale admission officer about this, and he didn't give me an exact number, but he was like, definitely if it's like half the word count, like you could build your thoughts out more than that. But, he wasn't comfortable kind of committing beyond that. I tell my students, and I say I'm extremely conservative, but I like them to try to get to 90% of the word count.
Well, yeah, I think that's fair. No risk.
I'm fully aware of the fact that admission officers will read many good essays that are probably 75, that are there 75. If we talk in Common App terms, 75% of 650, now you're around the 450 number.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So that's pretty low. Yeah.
I retract my percentage. You know I'm not good at math, Mark.
So 80% is going to be more like 520.
Yeah.
That would be 80. Yeah. And I'm aware that when I say 90, I'm aware that many admission officers say, like, I've read great 520, 530 word essays. So I just say I'm conservative here. And I haven't fought back on some that have been under that because they've been really good. But a lot of times people can use some of those extra words to build their thoughts out more. Especially, we always talk about show, don't tell. That oftentimes is missing.
Right.
And so I'm like, this can be a great place for you to have a nice anecdote to illustrate your point. And just build because you're building an argument. So I'm not saying to go with 90. I was just this is more of a compare notes.
Yeah.
I know and I tell people I'm very conservative. I know that it doesn't have to be 90. I know that anyone who's done admissions for a long time will say, I've read some really great essays. And then there's also unique things too that there's always that one exception that's outside the box, but that I would encourage people not to make that the norm that they hear.
Yeah.
If you notice, for example, any school that showcases essays as examples of good ones, and there's several schools that do that, whether it's Connecticut College or Tufts or Hopkins and many, many others as well. Most of the ones that they pick to choose are like usually, high 500s or higher.
Yep.
Higher. So that's just, how the question oftentimes comes up with me, Julia, it's, do I have to use every word?
Yeah,
that's usually how they ask it, right? Like they think, do I have to use all 650? And so that's usually when it comes up. But occasionally for a first draft, I will see something that is like nowhere near where it could be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was my first question. Anything more on that? Do you think we talked about that enough?
No, that's pretty good. I think it's a high risk game, college admissions, so it's better to be safe than sorry, right?
That's how I feel on this one. Like you can't go wrong with your word count with the 90% rule.
Right.
Like, you can't go wrong with that, right? That's putting you up into the high 500s. So the next question is, what advice do you give your students when they say, should I do a resume?
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you asked this, too, because I have like a horror story about this particular. So I got to tell you, I don't know, Mark, if you feel the same way, but I feel like it's more and more in almost every school in the Common App as my students are entering, the information in the member section. So many say, would you like to upload a resume? And it's giving the perception, I think, to students that like, oh gosh, I need a resume, right? So most of the time I say, if a school really does ask and say it's optional, I say, if you've got one, feel free. What I really worry about is the students that use the resume as their primary point to explain their activities and hobbies and credentials. My horror story is at a school I used to work at, and they do, it's not Haverford, they do committee-based evaluation, right? So they do one at this time when they were reading, one of the readers in the admissions office would read the personal side of the student, and the other admission officer was reading the academic side. Then they'd come together and they would discuss the student. We had at Milton one of like our best student leaders I've seen in my 8 years there. And she elected to only submit a resume and not really fill out her activities section well, because all of her schools said you could submit a resume. The admission officers at the school did not see the resume. And so when the personal person was talking to the academic person in the evaluation, they were like, this girl does nothing. Like, this is terrible. She was truly one of our best leaders out there. And when we chatted with the school, they were like, oh gosh, she really doesn't do anything, huh? And we're like, what? This is like our biggest leader. And she was denied from that school. And there was no going back. They didn't want to go look at her resume.
Sure.
And I do think that the average admission officer does not often have time to read the resume in conjunction with the activities list. So the only other time, and I really struggle putting this out there in the public, that I recommend is that, again, I work with a very privileged population, and those students often might have a research portfolio of sorts or really meaningful extracurricular activities that are not well captured in the 150 characters in the activities list. And at that point, sometimes I do encourage a resume, almost more like a CV for those students, so that there's a longer explanation of something that's really important to them. Maybe not just research, but maybe, I have, think about a lot of my College Horizon students where their cultural activities and traditions really require a little more explanation than in the activities list, so that the admission officer can really understand the commitment. So in that sense, I always think it might be nice to supplement with a resume, but with the caveat that, especially if it's optional, it might not at all get reviewed by the admission officer. And so you really have to be careful about what's in there. But hey, bonus, if you have a resume ready to go, you can upload it to a lot of colleges. And it works really well for when you maybe go to college. A lot of when you get an on-campus job, a lot of those places actually need your resume. So you already have a resume ready to go when you enter college. So it's not harmful, but I would say don't stress over it if it's not required. And then it might be a helpful tool for a specific subset of people.
Yeah, so I'm a little more pro resume. The one thing I start with is each school, when they get to pick their own custom questions, it's a question. They have the option of saying, do you want to upload a resume or not? So I start with the assumption that if they allow for it, they do it for a reason.
Sure.
I completely agree with you, though, that your activities is you still should see that as your primary place. And this is not a substitute whatsoever. This is not a license to do a half-hearted job. So the activities needs to be filled out. So then the next thing, now I know, and let me say this. I know that there are a lot of admission officers that hate resumes. There are a lot that absolutely hate them. Because with the Common App or whatever app, it could be Apply Texas, it could be UC, whatever it is, they're used to that format and they know right where to go. And it can drive them crazy that on a resume, they have to look all over the place for what they're looking for. I do have a strong preference for a one-pager.
Yes.
But you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And the other thing, I think it does need to look neat and clean. Like there's some great templates out there that look neat and clean. And that makes a big difference. But the other thing I do emphasize with students is it's the same thing we say about not duplicating your content in your writing. Like you do not want, your resume needs to provide value. There needs to be something there to justify people's time. So it can't just be a regurgitation of the activities list.
Right.
Now, obviously, there's going to be some overlap because you can't have a resume without saying anything about your activities at all, right? It can't be, but I look for them. I have my students I work with do some unique stuff. So I like them to have like the passport photo up there, grabs their attention. I think I've always liked, this is personal, but when we were in admissions, all of us in the office liked photos. So I don't know how you feel about that. And I know there's views on that. Like, are you discriminating? And is a tool being used to discriminate? And I know that some schools don't require them because they might feel they're being charged with discrimination. But every time, even now to this day, when my students have their nice little photo up there, I just think it looks really nice. Then I like, a lot of times they'll have like some kind of like statement of purpose or like goal or something. And what they're doing is they're adding value. They're providing some new information that's not in the activity section. Sometimes they will highlight a few of their activities that they went more in depth into. Like I worked with Karis, my oldest daughter, on her own resume when she applied to college. And she had a section that said things I'm passionate about and things I'm involved in. Things I'm involved in was just one line, like a one bullet point line, knowing that the admission officers really don't care about that. And then the things I'm passionate about, she was able to have many more bullet points and go more in depth than the 150 characters. So to me, that was a value add. Like at least if I'm looking here, I'm getting new information, important information to help me understand who you are. The other thing that I would say is I always tell students there's 3 purposes of the resume. There's the upload if a school gives you the optional, opportunity to include it in the admission application. There's giving it to an interviewer. I like my students to give it to their interviewers. I find that interviewers like to have them, even if they might decide to ask a question off of that. I mean, you know this, Julia. Alumni interviewers are not given very much information on the student.
No.
Right? They're given very little. So they do the job because they're interested in students. So they like to get them, and they may ask a question off of it. And then the other thing, and then, this isn't as necessary to a school like yours, but they can be a really good thing to give to your school counselor.
Yes.
As well, so they can know a little bit more about you. So I kind of think that's my thoughts. Any thoughts about my thoughts? And feel free to have pushback or say, I disagree with you, Mark. It doesn't, anything.
I will be honest. The picture makes me super nervous.
Yeah.
But no, I totally agree with you. And I often find for whatever reason, students really, it's hard for them to wrap their brain around the fact that their alumni interviewer doesn't have access to their application. So I completely agree with that. And even if you don't give it to the interviewer, I tell students to bring it with them to their own interview so that way they don't forget something they would like to chat about. And able to organize their thoughts that way. So completely agree. And I would just really second that. I actually think a lot of the anxiety about when a student says, do you want to upload a resume? They start to worry about, oh, I don't have something, or will it look good? And they start thinking of it like a tax form or something. So I usually tell my students to go to College Essay Guys templates because they have a bunch of different ones. And so it becomes a lot less scary to kind of fill out what feels like an adult document to present to other people.
Giving students a template is a huge help for them. I've had a lot of students over the years that have done great resumes, and they have given me permission to share them with other students. And I've done that, and that's helped people just tremendously a lot too.
Yeah.
Because they have said, oh, I like that template, I like that format, or they pick ideas up that they can use. In fact, I'll put this out here to our listeners. If you're listening to this and you want to see some samples of some really well done resumes from students, I have a nice little batch of that I use and I share, and I'd be happy to share with any of our listeners that want to see some examples of a couple of different models. But it's fun, Julia, coming on here and kind of talking with you about different things and seeing like when we do handle everything exactly the same and when we're different. And then sometimes, I'll hear your reasoning and it makes me think. I'm curious, what is the nervous part for you about the picture? Is it looks discrimination?
Yes. And I honestly, there's been some research on this. Like it makes me, there's the historical background of the pictures is really fraught in sexism and abuse, honestly. So that is why. But way back when the women's colleges and Radcliffe in particular used to ask for not appropriate photographs of the young women applicants. So I just like to move away from that. I like to move away from any appearance chat or visualization in the admissions process whatsoever. There's a lot of biases in even recommendation letters, right, where they talk about how someone looks. So, so I just like to, so basically discrimination. I just like to, kind of get away from all of that.
Did you see any of that at Haverford at all? Did you ever see?
The few times that actually, believe it or not, when I applied to Vassar, I was required to submit a photo. I remember that. And now it's like, Vassar would probably hate that they used to do that. The only time I ever saw it at, Haverford was often parochial schools for young women. Sometimes there was commentary that came across with the picture as well too. So I haven't had great experiences with it. And I'll say this, Harvard is a very self-selecting group. It would be rare if I didn't know what the student looked like before I read their application, to be honest with you. So I don't, maybe that's part of it, but no, I didn't really, it didn't really happen very often.
I mean, I think it's good that we bring this up because there are different views out there. Like Susan tends to feel similar to you on this. I think almost every single time I feel like when there's a picture of a student with a smile, I feel like it just like the way I feel about it is similar to what most schools say about interviews, which is interviews are rarely going to hurt you. Like, people like scared that I'm not a super dynamic person. This interviews rarely hurt you.
Right. That's
kind of my view. Like I had a picture from a student that I worked with this year. And it looked like he had a scowl on his face. and I was like, can we get one with a smile? And then when he sent one with a smile, I'm like, it looks great. So that's kind of my view. My view is more similar to like, but I also appreciate you. As a woman, you're bringing a real sensitivity and you're bringing a historic sensitivity. Do you think the thing with Vassar was rooted in the history of, does this look like a Vassar girl? Like we have a type of kid. Do you think it was all rooted in that sort of thing, like the history of that?
I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't be that was a practice with the Seven Sisters. So that could be exactly where that came from. And at the same time, deeply proud of my alma mater for being pretty radical and progressive. So I
Sure.
would have thought by 2003 they would
Yeah.
have gotten rid of that. But I don't know. That would be fun to try to go back into the archives and see what their reasoning was. Yeah.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, in the final part of Lynda's interview with Derek Terrell from the Coalition of College, Derek talks about the resources that are built in to the Coalition for College for Parents. Derek tells us about the benefits to being part of the Coalition for College. Derek talks about what are the biggest barriers that colleges face to providing access and equity. Derek gives us advice on how students, parents, and guardians and college counselors can take advantage of the resources that the Coalition for College offers. And Derek goes on the hot seat in our lightning round. Listen and enjoy.
You mentioned parents, and I know that not all, but many parents are always looking for a way that they can get involved and help. So what avenues are there for parents in this? Is there a parent logon that they can help students research or kind of keep track? Anything like that?
Absolutely. So, parents, guardians, you can create a free account on SCORE as well. If your student is on there, you can actually connect with them. There's a way for you to actually recommend colleges. So you can recommend a college for your student to add to their list to look at. But at the same time, what's really great about the parent and the guardian logon is there's a lot of information about financial aid. There are a lot of the college cost calculators that are built into it, so you can really see what a school is going to cost, or a good estimate of what that school is going to cost for your student and for your family situation. So it allows some of those tough conversations I think that parents have to have with some students during that last semester of their senior year. Hopefully, you can start having those conversations earlier so that you can find the best fit college for your student. That could be academic, social, but also a good financial fit for your family.
I think what you just said is one of the biggest reasons to really families should be taking a look at the coalition to be able to get in there early and start having that research done on the finances and those conversations. That's huge. You mentioned that students could start an account as early as ninth grade. When you have students start that early, are you recommending that they just get in and start, taking a look? Can they start logging grades and things like that from each year rather than, in September of senior year, trying to go back and enter in 4 years worth of grades? Can they do those kinds of things? What do you recommend when they're starting that young?
Yes, yes. So there are tons of tools and resources in there. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. We know that there are some school environments in which college is automatically at the forefront in ninth grade, sometimes even earlier. And then there are other communities in which it's not talked about really until that junior year or that senior year. However, it's the way that SCORE is set up. It's such an easy to use and student centric platform that they're really just fun ways for them to get involved. So the good thing though also is that anything that they do, any progress that they make, is actually progress towards their college application, but you're doing it in a way where it just seems like you're having fun. You're filling out quizzes. You're adding in some of those things, so that it's really a journey rather than you're coming in to do just an application. So yeah, so students can start, and anything that they do at that point, all of the work that they do will eventually contribute to that application when it comes time for that.
I like that. I know I may be not in agreement with everyone on this, but I think starting younger, earlier in high school is a good thing. I think that helps alleviate stress for most students. If you just kind of start in early, particularly when you see these seniors who come in late to the game and they're trying to get everything done over the course of 6 or 8 weeks. By the time you start high school, your senior year in high school, you've got to do a lot of things all at one time. So I like the idea of being able to kind of dip your toe in the water in ninth or 10th grade. So that's good news.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
ask you, for the colleges that are a part of the coalition, what are the benefits to them other than they're getting to reach this maybe a new demographic for them, students that they weren't reaching out to earlier?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a brand recognition for being a smart college choice, and that's what our members have in common, even across the huge diversity of schools that are members. But beyond that, we engage our members in professional development opportunities so that the coalition schools have the opportunity to learn from each other, as well as outside experts on all of the emerging issues in our field and how to do this work while centering access and equity.
When you talk about accessibility, what do you see as the biggest challenge to accessibility in college admissions?
That is a big question, Linda. So I definitely think I think ensuring accessibility and equity in college admissions, it really is a complex task, right? And it's going to involve addressing a lot of various challenges. As we've talked about, some students, especially those in under-resourced schools or communities, they may lack that access to information about college options, the application processes, financial aid resources. And I think this lack of awareness is what can really hinder their ability to make informed decisions, and that's a challenge that the coalition and our members are really working collaboratively to address. Also, financial aid barriers are a really big challenge to access, right? So not just the tuition costs and financial aid, but students from low income backgrounds may just be deterred from pursuing higher education due to those concerns about affordability. And as I mentioned earlier, our coalition members are dedicated to making college accessible and affordable, helping students graduate with low or no debt. So we're addressing those challenges in that way as a collective. But then, as I mentioned too, with those easy to use fee waivers, that we're helping students to even break down that financial barrier that might hinder them from even applying. So I think there are a lot of challenges out there, and the coalition and our schools are working to address as many of those as we can in a sustainable way.
Well, a couple of things that I like about the coalition, and what you're talking about is having that kind of one-stop shop where students can do all of that research, where families can explore the financial aspect of it, and you can apply. You have easy access to fee waivers because there are huge numbers of students that don't have access to quality college coaching, and it's something that we try and address on the podcast. We have all of our content out here for free, but still, to have that kind of resource available to students is so important. And one of the things I want listeners to understand that there's a huge variety of schools participating in the coalition. You mentioned Caltech. It it does not get much more selective than Caltech in colleges. So it's not just your small local college. It's a wide variety. You'll be able to find plenty of schools to choose from in the coalition.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I talked about how they're smart college choices, right? And I talked about how we have a diverse membership, over 170. But yeah, they're from all over the US, public and private, very small. I think our smallest school has 382 undergraduate students, as
No.
well as very large schools with over 70,000 students. And then, as you said, some schools that are more selective than others that are more open access. I think our selectivity ranges from 4% to 98% acceptance rate. So definitely among our list of members, we're confident that students will find a good fit.
That's great. That's great. Tell me what advice you would have for students, for parents, and we have a lot of counselors listening. So for counselors as well.
So I guess a piece of advice I would say is, the college application journey, it can really seem daunting and very, very complicated. And that goes for students, parents, guidance counselors alike, right? But there really are a lot of people and organizations out there that want to help, and the Coalition for College is definitely one of them. So definitely encourage folks to get on our mailing list, watch out for our upcoming events. because we do bring that expert advice from our member colleges directly to students, parents, guardians, high schools, CBOs, to really help demystify both the admissions and the financial aid processes. And then to try to help make this journey a bit more enjoyable or even exciting, as I really think it should be.
I agree with you there. It should be exciting. And you guys do have great webinars, and you got them recorded on your website. So lots of good information on the website. And tell our listeners where they should go. What is the website address?
Yes, it's coalitionforcollegeaccess.org. And you can go there
Perfect.
and you can find all of the information that we have from the coalition. And then if you would like to find out more and get on the SCORE platform as well, it's just score.com. But you can access that directly from our website as well. And just a reminder, SCORE is spelled SCOIR.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's an acronym for something, right?
SCOIR. It's an Irish Gaelic verb that means to exit, retire, or transition from one phase to another. And it was chosen by the founder of SCORE, who's actually Jerry, awesome man. And he is an Irishman from Belfast. And he was actually at a game. He was at a Notre Dame game talking to the director of enrollment at the time there. And he asked, "What's the score?" And that's actually where it came from and how it was born.
Oh, that's a good story. I had no idea. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. Well, Derek, last thing is no one gets out of here without going on the hot seat. So I have some
Uh-oh.
easy, fun questions for you. I promise they're
All
easy.
right.
So you have some unexpected downtime. What do you do to relax?
So I have a brand new puppy. Well, not so brand new now. She's just over a year. Rue, a mini schnauzer. So I will typically be with her at the dog park. I also am an avid runner, and I'm training for my fourth marathon in February. So if I'm not outdoors with her at the dog park, I'm out running around somewhere else.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations on Rue and kudos on the marathons. That I am very impressed. And Rue, is that RUE? Is she named after someone?
She absolutely is. That is RUE. She is named after my favorite Golden Girl, Blanche, who is Rue McClanahan.
I love that. I love that. That's awesome. Okay. Um, tell me, um, now I'm going to be thinking about the Golden Girls all day. I really will be. Tell me, what is your bucket trip vacation destination?
Oh, goodness. So let's see. I grew up in Kentucky, went to undergrad in Michigan, lived in Boston. So very cold places when it comes to wintertime. So any dream destination vacation for me involves warm weather, the beach, sun, all of those things. So I've never been to the Maldives, but I see pictures and that always looks great. So either the Maldives or Zanzibar, which is right off of the coast of Tanzania. Both look very, very beautiful, clear water. So those would be my dream destinations, one of those two.
Yeah. Well, I think we should get to the Maldives quickly because it sounds like they're going to be underwater soon. And
Yes.
Zanzibar, you know who's from Zanzibar? Freddie Mercury from Queen.
Really?
I really believe that's true. Okay. I hope it's true
I think
since
I need
I
to take
just
you to
said it on the
trivia.
podcast. I'd be down for it. I love that stuff. Yeah, double check me, but I'm pretty sure Freddie Mercury was originally from Zanzibar, or maybe his family was. But anyway, so last question. You get to have lunch with any person, living or dead, excluding family, because I know we would all choose our grandmothers or something like that. Who would you have lunch with?
Oh, gosh. You know, I would probably say Oprah. I mean, I've seen a lot of interviews with her where people have sat down, and every location that she sits down with anyone is so picturesque in the background. But also, I just know, right, it's very nice. There's a nice garden. So I feel like
And
probably
it's her
Oprah, but
backyard,
also,
you know.
yeah, yeah. So basically, I just want to be invited to Oprah's house, is what I'm saying, right? No, but yeah, no, she's done so much over her entire career, and I feel like she's reinvented herself multiple times, which I think is great. So yeah, I would love to sit down with her and just pick her brain and see, how her journey went, and how she's kind of dealt with all of the twists and turns.
Yeah, she's really done it all. And I'm with you. Her
Yeah.
interviews are always in somewhere beautiful, somewhere like the Maldives or Zanzibar. So same, same. Wonderful answers. I agree with all of them. Stamp of approval.
Great.
All right. Derek, thank you so much for your generosity of time. I really do appreciate it. And we may come back to you with more questions as the coalition continues to evolve and provide great services for students. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Lynda. It's been an absolute pleasure, and look forward to future collaborations with your college bound kid.
You bet. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.
Friends, on Thursday's episode, Vince is back in the saddle. And in part one, Vince shares a number of admissions tips. And then we begin discussing an article that appeared in the Chronicle of Higher Ed by Eric Hoover entitled, College List Building is Changing. Will that make college less equitable? Our question from a listener comes from Amy from South Carolina, and she has a question about housing deposits. And our interview will be part 3 of 5 with Marissa Salazar, who's over all visits at college, and we're talking about various ways you can visit a college. And we'll resume our college spotlights in January of the new year. And friends, I close out with a quote, and this comes from Christina DeCesar. Now, she's a former associate director of admissions at NYU. And as you know, I'm sharing 15 quotes on the personal statement and the writing because that's one of the things that very late in the game you can still change when it comes to your application. So this is 13 of 15. And here's what Christina says. I've always enjoyed essays that enable me to learn about the applicant's personality, whether that's an essay about a love or a hatred of cheese, a desire to learn multiple languages, or to study environmental engineering. I like learning how a student thinks. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Lynda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joyce Ducker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stalianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Lynda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcasts. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.